Hello and welcome back to the FordTechMakuloco channel. Today we're going to show you how to replace the canister purge valve, or ejector valve as they call it, on the 2013 through 2016 Ford Escape 1.6 liter Ecoboost engine. This is specific to the 1.6 liter Ecoboost engine. The 2.0 liter Ecoboost is very similar, different part number, and it's actually a little easier to change out. So you can just kind of follow along, get the general idea, and then you can just follow the lines and replace it on the 2.0 liter Ecoboost. I put both part numbers for the latest valves, the ejector valves, down below, so you guys can get the parts and do it yourself. Now, on the naturally aspirated vehicles, 09 and newer, Ford came out with a new canister purge valve. It looks a little something like this. Very small, compact, great design, right? Well, there's tons of problems. Up until this day, there's problems. 2020, vehicles that are coming out still have a problem using this valve, okay? Well, on the Ecoboost engine, because they're partially in a vacuum when they're at idle and low RPMs, and then you're in boost situations at higher RPMs, you cannot use that valve to draw the vapors from the fuel tank into the engine to be burned. You need to have this whole huge tubing system to make it all work, and that's where this beast comes into play. So, yeah, look at, naturally aspirated vehicles. This is it. Ecoboost, monstrosity, just to make it work. That's why these engine compartments are so packed with all these extra hoses and everything else, because they're much more complicated and much more expensive. That valve's probably $50. This is about $187 Ford retail anyway. So this valve right here is responsible for bringing fuel vapors that accumulate inside the fuel tank into the engine to be burned as you're driving down the road. It's part of a natural process. It's how the vehicles have been for years, but now it needs to be much more complicated because of the Ecoboost system providing boost to the engine. There's no more vacuum to draw the vapors in from the fuel tank. So these valves, this style, the F150 543 valve style, the other one I just showed you, they're all fraught with problems, and they all stick open. Now, when they stick open, the most common code you're going to get is a P1450, okay? It can't bleed up the fuel tank vacuum. The other code that's common is a P144A, P144C code, which is specific to the Ecoboost, and it talks about the ejector part on here not working properly, okay? Now, you may also get an O2 sensor code where it's stuck rich or stuck lean, P2195 or P2196, because this thing is drawing in all those vapors and just bringing all these hydrocarbons into the engine that wasn't accounted for. Now it's running rich. And then it purges them all from the fuel tank, to top of the fuel tank and the canister, and then guess what? It's drawing in fresh outside air because the canister vent is naturally open back there. So now you're running lean. Yeah, so you can get all kinds of codes with this failure around here. The other code is a P1450 and a P1457. I have seen that from time to time when these valves stick open, because they usually stick after a fueling event. So after you get fuel in the vehicle, you may notice it's hard to start afterwards. Things like dying out, maybe it dies out and you got to turn it off and turn it back on, and starts up, and never a problem again until you go to fill up with fuel once again, and you go through the same thing over and over again. This, or this, on naturally aspirated vehicles is what's causing it, okay? So because it's a little complicated and it's a little tight in here, we're going to show you today how to replace this ejector assembly on the 1.6 liter Ecoboost Ford Escape 2013 through 2016. Let's get to it. Now, even though the canister purge valve is so common, if you had the P1450 or P144C codes, you could pretty much safely just go ahead and replace it, clear codes, and be on your merry way. But for me, I like to go through some scan tool diagnostics, check some data before and afterwards. So as you can see here, we have a 2014 Ford Escape 1.6 liter Ecoboost, 138,000 miles on it or so, which is pretty good. So if that's the original purge valve, I mean, it's lived well beyond its normal life expectancy. These things can fail 20, 30, 40,000 miles. So as you can see here, pulling some codes on this car, we have a P1450, which is the Evap system's not able to bleed up the fuel tank's vacuum, and that is because it's pulling so much vacuum on it that even though the canister vent is open, the canister purge is stuck wide open also when it shouldn't be, and it cannot bleed up the vacuum in the tank, okay? So you'll get this code more often than not because these things stick open all the time. The other code that's associated with that can either be, like I said, the P2195 or P2196. The O2 sensor stuck lean or rich because it's just pulling all the vapors initially all through there into the engine, providing those hydrocarbons, and then once it purges all of them, it'll actually start pulling in fresh air from the outside and it'll go lean. So you can have it both ways. And then this code right here has nothing to do with our purge valve issue. This is another common issue with these vehicles, and I'll go over that in a future video. So we definitely have the codes there. You can see down below, we have freeze frame data, we have pending, we have permanent. So this has been going on for a while, the 1450 code on here. So there's one new test that we can do on the scan tool, and just to give you guys an illustration of what's going on here. In the Evap test on the Ford scan tool, there's literally a test for this because it is so common. So we'll go into the, I'm going to turn the vehicle back on. Now this one it's just stuck wide open, so it's pulling vacuum, and it's actually sucking the tank and almost crushing it in. So we'll go ahead and just go through all this on here, and then we'll go into the toolbox and give you a visual of what's going on here. And then we'll go change it, and we'll run the same test afterwards to show you the difference here. So there's a couple different parts of the Evap test that can fail. So each one of them is listed here. We're just concentrating on the canister purge valve right here. So we're just going to click on that one. It says start the engine up. So we can get that vacuum and actually test that canister purge. So you see right here, if canister purge is at 0, so it's closed, it should be closed. And canister vent is at 0 also, so that should be open with allowing atmospheric air to come inside of the tank and the charcoal canister on there. So we're just sitting there running right now, and ideally we should not be pulling a vacuum on the fuel tank. You can see it's sticking big time. You see it right there? I mean, it's sticking big time. So it's purging it. It's you hear that? It's actually sucking the tank in right now. I'm going to turn it off. But it's really bad. It's really bad. So what I was doing was blipping the canister purge on there and trying to get the stick and not stick and unstick. And of course, look at that. I mean, it just went way down. Look at the tank actually went into a vacuum on there real quick. And then the engine almost stalled too because it was pulling all those vapors through. So you can see this one's really bad, and that's exactly what's going on there. When this one, the canister vent is open, we should be getting fresh air into the charcoal canister and out, mainly out, of course, as it vents out through the charcoal on there. And then the canister purge being off, it's a normally closed valve. We should not be allowing vacuum into the fuel tank. Obviously, it's pulling it into a vacuum, even though it's off. So, interesting stuff. We'll redo this test at the end, and we'll show you. But right now, that tank does not sound good, so we're gonna cancel this test. I mean, it's pretty bad. Before we get started, here's a good general overview of how this line looks when it's installed on the engine. You can see it's all highlighted there. So we're back here connecting into our Evap system, coming up and over to our purge valve. We have a couple different check valves here. There's a connection down here at the charger cooler right there. And that's where we get our boost pressure feed on there. We have our air right there, and then of course our connection to the intake manifold there. So that really gives you a good idea of where everything's at on here. Like I said, you basically just follow the lines over there once you find it in the engine compartment. Now, for those of you out there working on the 2.0 liter Ecoboost, like I said, the lines are totally different. Different part number, I'll link to it down below. But the connections are pretty darn similar. You can see they're pretty darn similar, except you're tapping in down here to get your boost pressure feed for the system right there. For those of you out there wondering, how does this thing work? Why is this monstrosity built like this? Well, let's look it over real quick. So this connection right back here is where it gets the Evap vapors from, okay? They come in, and there's a little bracket right here, and then this is the actual canister purge valve, okay? This either allows or doesn't allow vapors to come into the engine. Now, these are naturally closed, so it needs power applied to it to open up and allow vapors to be drawn into the engine. So, coming right through here, through a check valve right here, it goes to the front of the intake manifold. It's where it gets sucked into the engine to be reburned when the engine's at low RPMs or idle, okay? So it comes right on through, no problem. When we're under boost, we don't have as much engine vacuum over here to suck it all in, so it uses the boost, which the connection's all the way down and over here. It uses the boost, which is going to get pressurized feed, comes up and through, comes right past this orifice inside this T here, and creates a Venturi effect, okay? So it actually draw the vapors that were coming in up through here and out, and then this one connects into the air inlet snorkel on there. So it has two different ways of getting into the engine depending on the boost and vacuum situation. So that's why it needs to be this big monstrosity now to get all those different connections and make it all work. All right, let's go ahead and swap it out. So the very first thing you want to make sure of is that you're working on a cool engine. We are going to be sticking our arms deep down inside the engine compartment, and you don't want to burn yourself changing this line out. Also, make sure your hood is open and our prop rod is in the proper location on here, nice and secure. You don't want the hood coming down and this thing's like a friggin' spike. Also, make sure you have some good lighting for all these deep, dark spots that we're going to be getting into here so we can get the job done properly. So what I'm going to do now is show you all the different line connections up close and personal so you know exactly how it goes, and then I'll pull back and let you guys watch it all happen. So the very first connection you want to go after is the one, the intake manifold here. So you can see the line coming over right here, and then it goes right into the intake manifold. So looking at it, you can see these little ribs right here. They're on top and bottom. So you simply get your fingers in there, squeeze it, deform it, and then pull it off, okay? Now, once that's off, you're going to have to just follow with your hand, follow a line over, okay? And we can go to the next one, which is on the air inlet right here. There's a green locking tab on here, these little wings right here, okay? So pull up on the wings and then pull up. There's one on each side. And pull it up. Once it pops up, the line pulls right off, okay? Continuing on with the line, the next connection is down by the charge air cooler. It goes underneath the air filter box and down to the side of the charge air cooler, which is easiest to get to from down below. But you can see it right here. And it's the same style connection right there. See, it has the green winged locking tab on there. Same thing. Deform them out, pull up, and then pull the line straight off. Be careful with this connection on here because that little nipple coming off the charge air cooler likes to break. So make sure it's the lock is disengaged and pull straight off and put the new line on straight on. Okay, that's my warning for the day. Then over here, you can see the line continues to the actual canister purge valve right there. Okay, and it has an electrical connector on top of it. So what you do is you come over here and you simply squeeze it, and then you pull up off of there. Okay, and get the electrical connection out of the way. Then the line continues back deep down inside of there, and it connects over to the Canister Purge Evap line and has that same style green wingtip locking tab. Same thing, deform it out, pop it up, and it pulls right off, okay? For that one, it's best to just go ahead and remove the air intake bellow section right here. So, of course, everything's buried on these engines. You can see deep down inside of here, like right there, there's a little worm drive clamp right there. Should be at 8 mil, 5/16, and then the same thing above. And just go ahead and get this whole thing out of here. This whole bellow section out of here, and easily get your arm through there. The one tip I will give you, though, is you see the canister purge is right here, and then has this big old bracket. Let me try to get you a better view down inside of here. The canister purge is right here, and then has this big old bracket monstrosity. So there's a nut right there and over there, and they're 10 mil, and then there's a connection for a harness right there that it goes to right there. You really don't need to change this bracket out on here. The canister purge simply slides off and back onto there. You can see it just kind of is like rubber like that. Slides off, take it off, pop the new one on, and it slides right onto there. That's what I would do when swapping it out of there. So I'm gonna pull you back and let you guys watch it all happen. All right, here we go. Some of this can be tricky. So like I said, the first one is the one intake here. Squeeze it together, wiggle, pull it off. There you go, that quick. The next one is over here on the air inlet. I use a cat claw like this, kind of pull up on both sides of it. And I'll actually just get rid of the clip because we're changing out the whole line. And then on the other side, there's gonna be another green locking tab on there, the secondary lock on there. You just push in on that. You gotta make sure you push in all the way and it will release the line. Get the line kind of out of the way here. Now here's that vacuum line from the vacuum pump that I like to release and get it up and out of the way so you don't break it off on there. So it's the same style as the one in the intake here. This same connection, you squeeze together, pull. So I do the same thing over here. Just be careful. And that'll give this line some flexibility so we're not yanking and breaking anything over here. So all these connections are done. The electrical connector on the Purge, get that off and to the side, out of our way. I'm going to walk off that canister purge valve off of there. There's a little clip on this one right here. Bunch of lines clipped onto each other here, right over here by it. So we're gonna be careful and we're just gonna kind of slide that off of there. Now because these can be dry rotted after a while and stiff and all that, you can actually just cut the old rubber mounting on there and get it off that way. Kind of break it up on there. It's still better than changing that whole bracket out in there and all different nuts and stuff. All right, so that's definitely loose now. Okay, we're good to go. Over here, we're good to go. We have the connection down the charge air cooler yet. Everything's still in place, but all the connections are taken out. And then the next one is the one back here. Now, like I said, if you can get your arm back inside of here and release it, you can do it without removing anything right here. But for me, I'm going to get you out of the way, and release the bellow on here. So I already loosened the clamp. And it's tight. It's tight. But once it comes out, it'll give you tons and tons of room. Work in here. Yeah, this one is, this one's been messed with me. Look at this. This is the air filter housing that someone's been in here playing with and never secured it back down. There it is. Now they changed the filter, that's why. Okay. So that probably was not filtering anything. Now a lot of times you just pop up on this hasp right here, like that, disconnect the IAT, okay? And there's a little retainer for that wire. Just like that. And it's better to get this whole thing out of here. There we go. I didn't break anything. We're good to go. And then the bottom of this whole housing just kind of pushes into the body. See, you start popping it up like that. Like that. There's one back here yet. And then it should come out after that. Okay, it's tight engine compartments. Okay, everything looks good in here. And then we can just stick our arm through here. You can see the canister purge right here. Going through. If you get a good light back down inside of there, you can see exactly what you're doing. And like I said, I'll usually break, I'll break the clip off of there and just get out of there. We're changing the line anyways. And it makes it a little bit easier. Be careful of the fuel line when you're sticking your hand back here. So I'll reach around to the back there, use my finger like this, push in on the primary lock on there, and then pick it back up and off of there. It shouldn't be too hard. Just make sure you're working on the right line back here. Go. All right, so we're loose. We're good here. There's a coolant line that kind of clips onto it. Everything clips onto each other on these friggin' things. So we'll kind of get that out of the way. Get some of this out of the way. And just kind of start forcing this over. It's a big monstrosity we're trying to get out of this tight engine compartment, so. All right, so at this point, we're pretty much ready to go. We can kind of work this out of here because it is flexible enough, and it doesn't matter if we crack the line going down. Because it is getting replaced. But you just need to kind of walk this thing through here. I mean, you can see all the different bends and everything like that, and it's just, I mean, look at this thing. All little humps and stuff. So at this point, everything is good to go here and disconnected, ready to go down below to the charge air cooler. So let's go ahead and do that. Now for the final connection, you need to get to it from underneath. So once the vehicle is jacked up nice and safe on some jack stands, come underneath here and get the fiber belly pan off of here, which has a bunch of like T30 screws all the way through, all the way around. Get that out of the way, and then we can look up inside of here and find that last connection. You can see it right there. So for the secondary lock on there, what I'll do is I'll use a long screwdriver like this, okay? And then you can get up in there, and I'll literally pop that thing right off of there. It's kind of hard to do a little bit one hand, but you get the point. I'll get rid of that connection on both sides, okay? And then what I'll use, once it's gone, is I'll use a long needle nose pliers, get up in there, squeeze that connection or release it around that last lock on there, and then slide it off, okay? And that'll get it off there safely without breaking the nipple. All right, back up top here with the air filter box out of the way. We're disconnected down below. The rest of it just comes right out. There it is, monstrosity. Now once it's out, make sure you clean all the nipples. I have to grease them a little bit. And then it's just simply the reverse of removal. I mean, just make sure you put it back in there. Get it back in there right. Make sure all connections are nice and clipped secure. Make sure your electrical connection is done. And you're good to go. We'll come back together at the end here and retest the new one. Show you how to clear codes. All right, now with all the repairs complete, let's go ahead and clear codes. And then we'll retest that the Canister Purge through the Evap on here. Now, of course, you're probably not going to have a scan tool like this. So if you don't have a scan tool, disconnect the negative battery cable and, 5-10 minutes and let it clear the codes. Reconnect it nice and tight. And then just drive the vehicle and it'll go through the test automatically as you're driving on the Evap system there. If there's any new concerns, it will let you know, trust me. All right, so since we have the tools, why not test it out? I'll show you how it should look on here. All right, same thing. Go into the toolbox on here for the Evap system. Go to the bottom. All right, let's do a canister purge check once again. Start her up. All right, now let's see how it looks. It's just gonna sit here and idle down, okay? You can see both of them are off. So we should have atmospheric pressure basically, okay? Around 2.6 volts. So it closes it, turns it on, lets it up. And each time it comes back to atmospheric pressure basically. See, it does it each time. And it just keeps doing it a couple different times on there. See how it's coming back up each time. It's trying to get it to stick is what it's doing. Turn the ignition off. Let's see what our results are. And there you have it. So basically it didn't find any faults with it right there. And you could see it each time it turned it off, it came back up because it was able to vent out in there. And it was actually sealing. And that's why right now there's no vacuum in the tank either. So what we're gonna do now for the heck of it is run a full evap test, suck it down, hold, and vent on there. And let it go through. And this should give us a pass-fail on here. Evap test. There we go. So first thing it does is it checks to make sure the tank is actually vented to atmosphere when commanded, okay? Usually around 2.6 volts. So right there, it's within the range. First part of the test passes. So I would say a tank is right around 15 gallons maybe. Doesn't make that big of a difference on here. This is a good way to check your work afterwards and to make sure the rest of the valves and the hoses and everything, there is no sticking valves or blocked hoses or anything like that. So this will check it all at once, and it should all work in concert together to make the system seal and vent when commanded. It's a pretty cool little test. It's fully automated. I was going to crank the RPM up, then it's going to turn on the canister purge, pull a vacuum, and then check the bleed up rate. And at the end, it's going to fully vent the system out. So you can see our purge is on. Our canister vent is definitely on. So it's plugging off the venting to the atmosphere. Looking good. Initially, it'll bleed up like that, and then it'll kind of dance like that. It'll bleed up, and then it'll dance. Maybe a little bit more, and dance back and forth. So that right there means the canister vent is, of course, sealing up back there, And when you're pulling power away from the canister purge, it's sealing also. So they're both sealing just fine here. And we're going to pass the bleed up on here. As we go through. Now it's venting, so the purge is of course off and closed, but it turned on the canister vent, which means it should equalize back to atmospheric pressure. And this will give you, your actual leak size. So we got 12 thousandths of an inch is our leak size, which is very low. I think California is 20 thousandths still. And federal is 40 thousandths. So we're well below that, okay? And this one, I guess, is federal emissions. You can see it there. It's 40 thousandths is a spec. So no more than 40 thousandths. We got 12 thousandths. That's our bleed up on there. So good to go. We are fixed, and that's all there is to it.